Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my other witch deck, that one being the Shadow Witches. So Shadow Witches were really cool when they first came out. They introduced an interesting style of play, an interesting game mechanic of kind of like cursing the opponent's field. Kind of like Seal Dragons. I kind of always used to compare them to Seal Dragons in a way, but they were probably better back then. Right now I feel like Seal Dragons are probably still a little bit better than them. Mainly because Shadow Witches have a hard time against decks that are filled with triggers that have effects. The worst offenders is probably Gold Paladin. Gold Paladin, especially Bluish Flame, is kind of like a joke. It's like they basically auto lose against anyone who knows how to play Bluish Flames properly. So there's a few ways out of it, but for all intents and purposes, Shadow Witches needs a lot of help. So if Bushy Road watching this, they probably know that. But who knows, with the next Vanguard series, with one of the main characters using Shadow Paladin, I feel like we're going to see some interesting stuff. So without further ado, this is the deck. So 4, Mesmerizing Witch Fianna. Fianna is still, I don't know, like there's some situations where I feel like Fianna isn't really all that good anymore. I don't know. I may drop her to 3, and I may bump Rias up to 4. I'm running 3 Rias. Rias is really good. Rias can actually win games still. Fianna kind of, I don't know. Like, right now, Fianna's purpose in the deck is to try to get 2 zeros on the opponent's field by removing triggers from their deck. And then hoping that the opponent can't get rid of those. But the big problem is that the opponent oftentimes can manage to get around that. Because there's so many triggers out there with effects now. So it's supposed to set up for Sinclair, but in practice it oftentimes fails. So you kind of have to fall back to using Rias as your win condition. Unfortunately, Rias is still really good though, so I may bump her to 4 and run Fianna at 3. The reason why I'm running 4 Fianna is because Fianna does have a relatively decent draw card effect, and this Shadow Paladin deck does not run any draw triggers. So there's that, but I may bump Rias up to 4, or I may take out this card. So I am running 1 Sharp Fang Witch Fodla. So she is a good tech card. You definitely do not want to ride this though. It's a 9k grade 3. The reason why she's in here is because Shadow Paladins, typically Shadow Paladins with the exception of Witches, can filter the deck and like basically float a bunch of grade 1s onto the field. The Diablo deck does that. Revengers can do that to a certain degree as well. But the Shadow Witches, they don't have that ability, except for this card. So, but she's a 9k, so we can't really use too many of her. If you want to run 9 grade 3, then you can bump Rias to 4 by taking out a grade 1 to keep Fodla. Otherwise, you may not run this at all. But that's my grade 3 lineup for now. Rias is probably still MVP though. For the grade 2s, 4 Femme, she's your 12k for the Shadow Witches, and she's the Legion mate for Fianna. There's not a whole lot to say about her. Next we have the Legion mate for Rias, 3 Deirdre. Deirdre has the ability to, when she's placed on R, Soul Blast 1, take one of the opponent's grade 0s. You choose a rearguard circle on the opponent's field that has a rearguard, so it does work around resist. A lot of people forget that, but resist doesn't work on these effects. And the opponent has to take one of their grade 0s in the drop zone and puts it on that circle, retiring that rearguard that was there. So 4 of her is good, but the deck does Soul Blast quite a bit, so there's a problem with her in that regard. To fix that, I am running 2 Dehtail, Witch of Intelligence. But the thing I don't like about her is that you have to have 2 Witch on the Vanguard circle, so you have to either be on stride that turn, or and on top of that, you must be striding Sinclair, or the stride unit has to have Witch. Well, actually, not really. That's not really true. You can stride Aura Geyser or something if you are in Legion, because then that would be like 3 cards on the Vanguard circle. And yeah, so you can do that. But Dehtail is kind of in there to try to do the same thing that this. She does what Rias does basically, They check top 5, they reveal the top 5, and they put that thing, they put grade 0 on top of a rearguard circle that you chose. It has a unit, so 2 of her, because she doesn't really do anything in the early game, so you can't really rush and try to set up their field correctly. And most of the time, the players will play kind of smart against witches. They won't really like put a bunch of rearguards out early. They'll kind of hold back, but then they know that if they never call out rearguards, then you're just going to go into Diablo and just auto-win that way. So, next we have 2 Adra. This is the only other grade 2. She's your soul charge and unflip engine. But she only gets that ability when she hits the Vanguard. And they have to have 2 or more grade 0s on the field. I think in the future, what Bushiroad may do to fix this problem is they'll either introduce Effect Veiler effects for the witches, where they negate the rearguard, like the grade 0 when it's called, it becomes a vanilla. Or what they'll do is they will reduce the requirement. They'll start making witches that have effects when the opponent has only 1 grade 0 as opposed to like 2 grade 0s. So something like that needs to be done to make this deck a little bit more viable. And then next for grade 1s, for Little Skull Witch Nemain. So she's the witch perfect guard, so you gotta run this one. For Donna, she is basically the same thing as Deirdre, but it's grade 1. So you run the max copies of it to give you enough ways to get grade 0s on their field. 3, Scathach, I'm not sure how to say her name, but she's your 10k attacker. 2, Branwen, stride fodder, because you need to stride sometimes to win. Because sometimes this deck will have some issues. It's just hard to explain. Like, on paper, the witch deck seems really strong, but in the current meta, it's not really that good. And then 1 which is familiar, Kuroma. Just 1, because it's, again, you have to have the number of grade 0s on the opponent's field has to be 2 or more. So, just 1 of it to help you draw. You discard and draw 2, basically. So that's the grade 1 lineup. For the trigger lineup, it's quite different, actually, compared to most of my other builds. So I am running 2 Mage of Rogue Eye. 2 of this, because, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of ways for the witches to superior call stuff from the deck. They're not that type of deck. So you need to discount the cost for your stride units, like Aura Geyser, for instance. So we run 2 of him for that reason. Next, 2 Wish of Goats. So 4 stands, so you can probably guess what the trigger lineup is. But this is basically how you unflip as well. Effectively, it's your most consistent way besides Adra. And then the rest are just going to be your criticals and heals. So we got 4 Goewen. Goewen is a win condition card along with Rias. She works really well with Sinclair as well. So you got to run 4 of her. Then 4 more critical, witch critical, and then the witch heal. And the starter is Promising Knight David. So when you see me run a because I don't like to run things out of theme like this, but me running this guy tells you that there's a problem with the witch's deck. Like, they need some help in terms of like new support or whatever. Like, please Bushiroad make an Effect Veiler for them, because I think that this would be the perfect deck, or the perfect sub-clan to introduce if rearguard effect negation, because I feel like that's where this game needs to go, negating rearguard effects. Not Vanguard effects, but rearguard effects. Like, that's what the next game mechanic needs to be introduced. So he's in here for Aura Geyser and Diablo, so you can actually do those plays. The Witch starter isn't really all that good either right now, because you have to be in Legion, and you know. For the Stride lineup, it's 2 Sinclair. I rarely find myself using this. I have used it in a couple of games. One time, basically what it says is it's like the opponent, say goodbye to all your counterblasts, otherwise you can't block me except with grade 0s. Next for Diablo, because Diablo is Diablo, he can auto-win games. I've played against I've gotten free wins because the opponent, sometimes I'm up against an opponent who knows how annoying witches can be. So he decided he's not going to call that many rearguards, so he only had like 1 rearguard on the field. And it was his grade 0 starter, and then I strode into this, and yeah, retire this and some other random card, and he can't block, and he just auto loses. So that's the nice thing. I will say that Diablo is a very good card. He reminds me of Black Luster Soldier in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where he's so good that just by him alone being in the deck just makes it good. So witches right now are probably the bottom tier Shadow Paladins. But thanks to Diablo, they still have some viability, regardless of how minor it might be. Of course, Aura he's also really good too. I find myself trying this a lot. Because if I have trouble getting grade 0s in the opponent's field that can stay long enough on their field for me to stride to Sinclair, then I'm going to be going into these, like, the trusty old Aura and Diablo. And then the rest are just kind of like the random extras. So you've got your Grim Recruiter, because they don't have any way of superior calling anything, except for using that one grade 3. One Distress Dragon, because why not? One Medb, because you never know if you don't have enough if you can't retire 3 for the Diablo, or if you don't feel like just swinging 36k with a critical for whatever reason. Whether you don't have any counterblasts or whatever it is, you can stride this, assuming you're in Legion, for free. Then 3 of the Dark Knight Ludwig. Ludwig is actually kind of lousy. He's subpar, but I will say that he does work well with the fact that we can call grade 0s like this to the field. So he moves a grade 1 or less, so he can move a grade 0 to the Guardian Circle, so that can essentially make him be a pretty decent defending G-Guardian. So 3 of him, 1 Scryu, and 1 Desmol, because this deck actually has enough space to run these cards. One change I'd probably make is I would probably take out Distress Dragon for the anti-grade 2 rush thing. But that's probably the only thing I would probably change. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think of the grade 3, grade 2, grade 1 lineup. Also, I'm really open to advice on improving this deck, if possible. So you guys saw through the deck. Let me know what you guys think, what you would do for the grade 2 or the grade 3 lineup. Maybe I'm considering not running Fianna at all and just running like 4 Rias and either Rias, 2 of this, and 2 of that 10k other thing, that defensive card they've got. But maybe Fianna's still probably one of the better decks, or better cards to rely on. But anyway, guys, hopefully the witches will get more support in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.